Welcome to Lesson 6. Today we'll discuss events. As you browse the web and interact with websites, your browser is actually registering different types of events. This is the browser's way of saying something just happened. Your scripts can then respond to these events. This is referred to as an event firing or raising an event. Whichever term you use, it is still, hey, something just happened. There are many types of events that can occur, as you can see here. So how do you get events to trigger? 1. Select the element nodes the script will respond to. 2. Decide which type of event will trigger the response. Then 3. Write the code that will run when the event is fired. There are 3 ways to bind events to an element: HTML event handler attributes, DOM event handlers, and DOM level 2 event listeners. When events occur, an event object can tell you more information about it. You'll get properties like target, type, cancelable, and methods, prevent default, and stop propagation. So what does all this lead to? By having your script respond to events, you introduce interactivity into your web pages. So let's get interactive. Okay, so we're going to start working with JavaScript events. So our first one we're going to work with is the HTML event handler attributes. And it says do not use here, and I'll tell you why. So this one, we'll type hello, and as soon as we leave the box, it'll fire. Okay, as soon as we leave the box, username must be 5 characters. And something. So let's take a look at the source code. So here we see for this input we have this handler here on blur equal check username. So this is an HTML attribute event handler. So the JavaScript is kind of put right here. And if we look at the JavaScript, it's going to call this function check username, and it's going to get the document element by ID, get the feedback for the message, get the username, and check the username's length, and then add the appropriate message to this element, which is username must be 5 characters or more, but if it's greater than 5, then it will just be blank. So why is it not good to use these HTML attributes for event handling? Well, as the book says, and the Mozilla Developer Guide, these attributes should be avoided. They make the markup bigger and less readable, and there's concerns, content structure and behavior are not well separated. So what this part here is important understanding is that the content, HTML should just be the content. It shouldn't also be the application logic. So that's why we want to have these in separate JavaScript files. And there's other things such as exposing global functions of the window object and including the global namespace. That means putting functions that may not be appropriate in the global namespace. I know for this class we used a few on clicks, and that is until we learn some more JavaScript. So that is the event attributes. Now we can use a DOM event handler example. In this one, what happened? Oh, same thing. So let's take a look at the source code for that one. So this is event handler HTML. Let me just look at it here. So we see it here. Notice our input doesn't have any. Our input doesn't have that on blur. And now when we look at the JavaScript for it, we see this. So we have the function, username, get element by ID, and then that's our function we're going to call. Then we have this one, var l username, element username equals document get element by ID username. So we get the username from the input, and then here we're going to do it this element when it has an on blur to do this function, check username. So on blur means lose focus or focus out, and it'll call this function. So that's another way to declare an event. Okay, minus there. And then in the event listener example, take a look here. So I'm going to create 1, 2, 3. Get fired, and let's take a look at that one. Same. The HTML looks the same as the other one. So let's take a look at the JavaScript. So what's different? Here we have the same thing. We declared our username input, var username equals document dot get element by ID username. But here we're using an event listener. So we have username dot add event listener when its blur call this function. So when you do it that way, you can add multiple event listeners. Okay, and here we can do with a parameter in the event listener. So let's take a look at that. This looks the same. Let's take a look at this one. So here we're getting the username, we're getting the message, and I mean the element, username element message. And here's the function. And here is, here we go. Username, add event listener, blur, anonymous function here. Where does it end? It ends right here. So why do we have this anonymous function? Because the way the event listener syntax, it has to be a function without any arguments. So how can you pass arguments to a function? You create an anonymous function that will call the named function with your arguments that you want to pass. So this one will call the function in here, check username with 5 as the parameter. So if I'm in here, it'll say, is the username.value.length less than this minimum length? And if it is, this is the message, username must be the minimum length, whatever we passed in. Otherwise, don't display any message. Yeah. Information with fallback for IE8. So we're gonna just take a quick look with IE8. So let me look at this NetBeans event. Let's just get a nice color. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. See? In this case, if it has event listener, which means if this is supported, then create an event listener for this username, which is username, get element username. Let me highlight the whole thing. Okay, so this is if the browser does support event listeners. Otherwise, we're gonna do attach event. So this is the Internet Explorer fallback for versions version 8 and I think below. So a lot of this is the issue with cross-browser compatibility. You're coding your application this way, you're using event listeners, and then you're like, oh, it doesn't work in Internet Explorer. Why is that? Oh, because Internet Explorer implemented it in a different way. Instead of add event listener, they have attach event. And so then you'd write code to handle that situation. And of course, as I mentioned before, jQuery, which we'll learn pretty soon, is one way that developers have figured out how to avoid this double coding. You know, you're coding for one browser, then you're doing the same code for another browser. So they made it a nice library that tries to handle all this cross-browser incompatibility. Okay. Okay, so loading an event. Let's see what the event was. Load. When page load, call setup. And this is a longer version. Okay, so this one is getting it so that we set the focus to the text input box. So let's take a look at that. And where's the focus? It is in the input box. It goes back to the focus. Goes back to here. Focus, if you can see the blinking cursor. Oh, okay, let's do a click event. Here. Let's go click JS and NetBeans. Okay, so we created a message up here. So we have this element node, which is going to be, we're going to create a div for it. We're going to add an ID of node, inner HTML of this new node, which we created in memory. Let me show you the page. Do you see create element div ID node? As you can see, there is no ID equals node anywhere, and then we're going to append it to the DOM. And there's the function dismiss node is document remove child L node. So the L close equal document L, and we get on by ID close, so that's the close button. And so we're going to add a event listener. So click when this element is clicked, then we're going to fire this function dismiss node. And if we look back here, let's reload the page. Here we go. I'm going to press F12. Where is the mod? Okay. Here we're going to click. The click event's going to happen. It's going to call dismiss node, and it's going to remove that child element. Okay, that was the source code, and that was the click event. Notice we didn't have any. So since we created this element in memory, we of course we don't have any way to write it in the page, any click events. So that's a good way. We attach this event listener to this created element, which created in memory. And part of this message, as you can see, is HTML div class equal header, and then there's the close button there. You know, we can of course modify that. And remember, this is what are these here? These are escaping this string here. Okay. Okay. Next we're going to look at let's look at a form example. So select a package, save ternary pay for 1 year, and that's the interaction with the page. And if we agree to the terms and conditions, What happened there? Now, let's take a look at the source code. So we have a select box here with the packages. Let's see, value annual and value monthly. Now let's look at form.js in NetBeans. Form.js. Okay. We see a lot of things here. So we've declared our variables, we've declared our form, select package, the hint, the terms hint. So we have this package hint function. So it's going to get the selected index.value of the option group. And so if that, what you picked was monthly, it's going to tell you, it's going to give this message back to the element package hints in your HTML, which, put your mouse here, it tells you where this is used. So package hint equals document element ID package hint, which is in right here, package hint. Right there is nothing, of course. Otherwise, put this one, wise choice, if it's not equal to monthly. So this is, oops. So this was form HTML, and I'm going to make a quick modification to form HTML. Look at the page. Okay. See, we have a new option there. Now if we click 1 year, that's the change event. Save developer to pay for 1 year. 1 year is one wise choice. If we click 16 months, it's also wise choice. Let me reload the page. If I click down here, wise choice. Now, does it know anything about this new option? No, it doesn't, because in the logic, it's only checking.
Sorry.
Okay. It's only checking if this is equal to monthly. Otherwise, it's a wise choice. Okay. Okay, here we go. And check terms. So that means we're adding an event listener. Here we go. 2 event listeners. So the form has an event listener on its submit button, which is going to call check terms. So it's going to check terms in the event and goes and then it's going to check. If this button is not checked, remember when you see this exclamation sign, it means not. So instead of checked means not checked. So when it's not checked, give this message. You must agree to the terms and event prevent default. So do not submit the form if those terms are not checked. So if we go back to the form and I hit next, you must agree to the terms. And so that is event handling. Okay, that's it for today.